Good morning. As Mark said, I am Joanne McCall, the Vice President of the Florida Education Association, and with me is Secretary-Treasurer Clara Cook. We'd like to welcome you to the FEA this morning. This morning we're here to talk about Florida's mania for testing and to show you some real-life examples of how the state's testing system has an impact on the lives of our students. In a minute we're going to show you a very powerful video. And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, it is powerful. And if you don't shed a tear, then I say you don't have a very good heart, because this will really touch your heart. We shot this video in December at the Karen M. Siegel Academy in Polk County. You will witness for yourself firsthand how testing works with some of our students, and they will show you firsthand. I was very saddened and angered, both as a mother and as a teacher, to watch this video and to see what students must endure to meet the Department of Education requirements. Yet these tests are used by the Department of Education and are required by our state officials to grade schools and evaluate our teachers. This video illustrates clearly will illustrate to you that the state follows a rigid adherence to the test and not what is best for our students in this state. These high-stake tests are valued above everything else by those who set the education policy in this state. They are valued more than our teachers. They are valued more than our other school employees in our public schools. They are valued more than the administrators and the local officials who run our schools. And above all, they are valued more than the students we work with each and every day to educate and to prepare for their lives as respected, and let me say that again, ladies and gentlemen, respected members of our society. We need to bring some sanity to the testing madness. Now let me correct that. We must bring some sanity to this testing madness. It cannot continue. And I'm going to introduce Marianne Capizzello. She's the president of the Polk Education Association. She's going to introduce our video. She's going to introduce you to the folks that we have brought here today. And then after the video, I'll come back and we can entertain some questions. Thank you. Marianne?
Good morning, and thank you for coming. I'm happy to be here this morning to introduce this video, Our Students Are More Than a Test. Before we watch this video, I want to take a moment to talk to you about the Karen M. Siegel Academy, a truly wonderful public school in Polk County, Florida. It's a special needs school that serves students with significant cognitive disabilities. The learning environment provides continuous supervision, personal assistance with activities of daily living, complex medical care, comprehensive behavioral programs, and differentiated curriculum for each student in that school. Students range in age from 3 to 22 years of age. With me here today is Donna Swindle, who is the longtime principal of Karen M. Siegel Academy. Donna is a longtime advocate for students with exceptional needs. She sets high expectations for both her students and her education staff. She believes that special needs students need to be respected, need to be challenged, and need to be brought as far educationally, emotionally, and physically as humanly possible, and her school mirrors that environment. Also here today is Kathleen Nall, who has been a teacher of these students for 31 years and is excellent at her craft. She loves these students and works and advocates on their behalf every day. She is one of the finest human beings I know. She is the teacher that you pray that your child gets if they have special needs. She builds rapport and trust with her parents and her students. She works to take her students as far as they can go, and she has the utmost respect of her colleagues. We also have two stars of the video here today, Luis Medina and his mother Maria Rivera. You'll learn a little bit more about Luis in our video. Our Students Are More Than a Test. The CD we are giving you today has the video you were about to see and contains 4 short vignettes about each of the students in the video. But I'd like to take a moment to tell you a little bit more about Luis. Luis was a normal, healthy little boy until January of 2009, when he suffered a severe cardiac arrest and was deprived of oxygen, leaving him in a persistent vegetative state. Luis is now cortically blind and is one of the students served at Karen M. Siegel, and not only served, but loved at Karen M. Siegel. So with that, we'd like to show you our video, Our Students Are More Than a Test.
Meet Audrey.
I don't want you to look at me. I want you to look at this picture that's the same as the book.
Audrey is a special student at a special school, Karen M. Siegel Academy, who has very special needs.
From office staff to the teachers to the paras, everyone's heart is engaged with the students in this school. When Audrey first came here, it was a gift to both of us.
The value that I see in Karen Siegel Academy, they are more concerned about the capability of how Joya functions, so they're more on an individual basis.
The personal work very hard to try to get our kids first team healthy, comfortable, and try to make them do their best.
The reason I chose this school is for the teachers, and also my ability to come in and watch my child and then learn what's going on, his goals, and then go home and continue it. My child, the teachers are the key to my child's success here.
All Florida students must participate in the state's assessment and accountability system. It's the law. The Florida legislature realizes that the FCAT is not appropriate for every student, so they implemented the Florida Alternative Assessment.
Only 1% of the total population, school population, is even allowed to be on an alternate assessment. That's a pretty small group of students. And perhaps 75 to 80% of those students, this assessment is fine for. It seems to be, from what I understand from my colleagues, appropriate. But here again, when you go down to, when you get involved with students with multiple and complex disabilities, they are different than the other students who take the Florida Alternate Assessment.
First, I'm going to read you a story.
Students with complex disabilities such as Lewis, who is cortically blind and in a persistent vegetative state. The Florida Alternative Assessment, or FAA, is a rigid standardized test. Notice, it requires the teacher to read to a student who can't understand and show drawings to a student who can't see.
My main concern is that it's not an appropriate assessment for our population, and that I feel like it's disrespectful to the student in many cases. And I had a parent ask me, well, how do I prepare my child for this test? And it's like, well, there's not a way to prepare.
Joya, here are 2 pictures. Where did they pick Grandma up? Let go.
The FAA measures basic academic skills, such as reading and math, but many students at Karen Siegel Academy are unable to master those skills.
My sister is 16 years old. Her cognitive level is about birth to 3. So I feel like they're asking very abstract questions or very high-level questions, and she needs to be tested more on like a functional, concrete scale.
Which one is different from a square?
Questions must be asked of children who are unable to communicate answers.
I don't think that the Florida Alternate Assessment is respectful. It's asking her stuff that's not accurate to her. It's not geared towards her or what she knows. It's disrespectful.
Sometimes Mrs. Vasquez isn't at home on Saturday, so she leaves the $10 in an envelope.
I just saw my child, Joseph, be tested, and I was walking out to my car, and I realized that I was so worked up inside and so frustrated because there was zero correlation between what he was tested on and what my child knows and what he's learning. And it doesn't represent the thriving environment here at Karen Siegel. And it appalled me that my teacher's salary could be tied to that someday. It made me sick that we're throwing money towards this test that is irrelevant. Zero correlation.
While the FA continues to assess students on subjects beyond their grasp, it also produces a report that is meaningless to parents and teachers.
I was disappointed because you cannot measure a kid like my son with his disability. It's very stressful for him.
Since we started with this alternate assessment approach, I really did my best to embrace it, to get involved with it, to talk to the teachers about it. I would even show teachers, like, this is what your students made this year and this is what they made the next year. And then when I began to see how it reflected no learning gains for over 75% of our student body, we have about 16% of the students at Karen Siegel that do okay, the rest of them don't, that I quit doing it because it was so degrading and disrespectful to the teachers.
As a result of my frustration with the black and white testing of things that are irrelevant to my child, I checked the box that said I no longer want my child to be tested by the Florida Alternative Assessment. No longer will my child be put in a wheelchair for an hour or whatever it takes, read inane stories, taking choices away. To me, that doesn't show my Joseph.
It's not testing what she really knows. She could be learning other things. She could be learning her alphabet, which is what she's still working on at 9 years old. She could learn, work on better head control.
An alternative way to assess the children is already in place, and the teachers and parents love it.
I would like the lawmakers to know that, and the Department of Education to know that there are other ways to measure student progress for the most severely complex, and a more fair and just way to do that.
The individual educational plan is developed with the classroom teacher, the parent, occasionally the school psychologist, depending upon what testing they've just had done, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language therapy, and then any other specialists that need to be invited. And this team develops the goals and objectives for that student for the next year based on where they are and where they need to go.
This to me is like the People magazine of my child. This is the daily agenda. And in here it tells me everything I need to know. It tells me what they're studying or what their theme of the month is. It sends home his artwork. It tells me how his attitude was, what he liked today, what he ate today. It even tells me if he poops, so I know what to expect later in the day. This to me is far more valuable to know exactly what my child is doing.
If the FA continues to judge schools like the Karen M. Siegel Academy and teachers like Kathleen Nall, other schools and special needs teachers may cease to exist.
If we use this assessment in the state of Florida to evaluate the students and the teachers, the end result could be that Karen M. Siegel Academy would be dissolved.
The result of the Florida Alternate Assessment does not make me feel valuable as a teacher. It's because the lack of common sense.
The teachers here are passionate about what they do, and to test a kid that doesn't know how, cannot correctly answer a test, it shouldn't base what the teacher is going to be paid. It shouldn't base off this test what my daughter knows, because it doesn't.
Less than a month from videotaping at Karen M. Siegel Academy, under Florida Statute 1008.212, Polk County applied that 8 students with extreme disabilities be exempt from this assessment, including Joya and Lewis. All 8 were denied by the Florida Department of Education, citing there is insufficient evidence that the assessment results would reflect the students' impaired sensory, manual, or speaking skills rather than the students' achievement of the benchmarks assessed by the FA. The Florida Alternative Assessment is a badly flawed system lacking common sense. Its continued use will impair the development of children and ruin the careers of teachers. Is the FA accountability or lunacy?
pretty powerful. And I'm just guessing, the commissioner probably wants that letter back, as she should. This testing mania has to stop in the state, and we have to do what's best for our students. We'll entertain any questions that you might have, and then we'll give you an opportunity to meet them individually.
I have a question. How much of this is partly related to the No Child Left Behind waiver that we got a couple years ago? Because it did pretty much mandate that we have to now grade special center schools and include students with disabilities into the formula.
The FOB is clearly a state assessment that the state is requiring. So the waiver that we asked for to exempt people like Louise goes to our state department, which is where we got the no. So that's the answer. This is a state-mandated test that has been declined by our Department of Education to give him an exemption.
And another question, you suggested an alternative means of accepting, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong about this, that are you saying that, students with disabilities, we should use their progress based upon their IEPs to determine everything else that we need to and not use the FOB? Is that what you're saying in this video? So I think that's what I heard.
I think there's a mixture. There are certainly kids that can use the FOB that you can judge and it works for. But there are clearly students that the FOB does not work for and you need an alternative measure, like their IEP, which Louise would fall in that category. It has to be about common sense, ladies and gentlemen. It has to be about doing what's best for our students. Kids are not widgets. They don't all fit into the same mold. And we should be assessing where every student is and where they're going. And you know what? The best people to ask are the people that work with those students every day. Not the legislature and not the DOE. The people who actually touch our students.
It seems to me you're casting aspersions on the entire testing system, which seems to be in great flux right now.
It absolutely is, and I would say that that's probably a fair assessment. I believe that we're more interested in a one-fit measure of a high-stakes test and not really looking at the students that we should be looking at or multiple measures. Using a high-stakes test on any one given day and judging whether that student is promoted or graduates and how the school is rated A through F or how teachers are evaluated and paid is never a good thing, and I think the whole system should be stopped. We should take a pause. Rather than being first, we should be right, and we should do what's best for the students in the state of Florida. And this is not it.
But is it fair to attack the entire testing system when this is a relatively small group of kids that are being tested?
I think this is a small group, but I think the overarching thing, much of what Mr. Bassalinda just pointed out, is the system itself is in chaos and disarray. And it all needs to be, we've been talking about that from the beginning. You know that the BAM scores got sent out. They're irrelevant. They're meaningless. People can't even understand them. In this state, we are grading schools A through F based on a high-stakes test. We need to stop and pause and get it right. The system should be clear, understandable, concise, and a fair and accurate measurement. The Florida Education Association fully supports accountability, as do the teachers and principals that work in our public schools. But it needs to be a system that's fair, consistent, and concise and understandable, and the system we have in place, ladies and gentlemen, is not it.
Can you clarify, does the IEP show, would that be used to show student growth, like the assessment would, the alternative assessment? Would they be able to use that to show what a student has learned or achievement?
Yes. The short answer is yes. I am a specialty teacher myself. I'm an SLP, so IEPs are very critical. That's how you run your agenda when you're teaching your student, and then you use that as your guide to measure and know how they've met the goal, when they met the goal, and when you move on to the next goal. So yes, absolutely.
And at the same time, would it be able, with parents whose teachers aren't as involved or aren't as caring, would they be able to tell that their children aren't receiving the education that they should?
I believe that all of our teachers that work with special students that have an IEP are caring and loving and communicate with their parents on a regular basis. That is also in district policies where every so many weeks they have to have a progress note that goes home intermittent between the grading period and then in addition to their grading period, where all of that is documented so that the parent is always understanding where their student is and where they are and where they're going.
I have another question. In the video, you have a parent who said that she checked the box that said she didn't want the FOB. So in that instance, where the parent opted out of the test, what happened? I mean, could all of these parents have opted out of this particular? No. Why? Why say no?
Go ahead.
You might, well, that gets a little confusing because I'm Donna Swindle. I'm principal of Karen Siegel Academy, and I'm not an expert in everything. However, what the complication with this opt-out business on the IEP is that really theoretically that should mean that Joseph now has to take the FCAT. So it's very confusing. And then there's a movement nationally with parents of students with significant disabilities that are calling it opt-out, America or something like that. So that's a whole different train that's going on that the parents do. And the only other thing I'd like to say about the IEP, if I may, the IEP, when the students are self-contained and have multiple issues, the IEP is more detailed. In Polk County, all you have to write is a goal per domain. If you're at Karen Siegel Academy, you have to address the goals in those domains as well as objectives in those domains, as well as provide data that goes with them. From my point of view, as a past educational diagnostician, you should have multiple points, not just the IEP. The IEP is your guiding curricular approach with our students. However, we are very strong in communication, developing communication skills. Many of our students are at the awareness level of communication, and in order to even take a test, they're going to have to move out of that to some sort of symbolic understanding of language. So we do have massive amounts of information that can be used probably, and perhaps the problem is you're not going to put it in a little Scantron and come up with this magic score. It's going to have to be looked at case by case, and in other states they do it differently. And they also provide, the parent puts input in. What are your perceptions of what's going on with your child? And the other thing about students with significant disabilities, if you're going to get it right, the parent's going to be part of the guiding curricular approach that you take and the instructional programs that you choose. So, does that help you?
Okay. Case by case, you're going to prevent them or prohibit them, the state, to be able to easily grade teachers or to easily...
It wouldn't, no, it would not be easy. I don't think evaluating teachers is easy to begin with, nor should it be. We're dealing with human beings, both the teacher and the children. People are complex. Situations are unique. I only come from a very different area of special education even, but it's not easy. It's not easy to evaluate teacher performance or student performance all the time. You have to look at multiple sources at multiple times in order to get it right.
And so how would you evaluate these students? I mean, how would you design a test or an evaluation program or whatever you call it?
Well, there's a lot of different ways, and I think it's something we all need to sit down and look at. Of course, you're going to have to address the IEP. You've got to. I think when you're talking about students with significant disabilities, you're going to have to look at some sort of communication assessment and profile that looks at their needs at their levels of 0 probably to 2 to 3 years developmentally. I would like to see quality indicators. How are we, what's going on in their independent functioning lives? We could also look at how are we addressing the needs of the families through getting them involved with outside agencies. This is just, it's a long discussion. Right. But it can be done if the desire is there.
If you don't try to do...
I don't think I was supposed to come up here.
This is about you guys. I have to tell you, this is really about them. They were really brave to step out. And I have to give Maria her kudos because it's hard. It's hard to put your kid out there. It is. And she stepped up, and her and Ruben, her husband back there, who just wants to be in the background, they were really brave to do this. So no, this isn't an FEA thing. This is about what's good for kids. So ask away. We're here to answer those questions.
And I'd like to say that all of the things that Donna Swindle was just talking about point to a multiple measure. I think the problem we have in the state is the continued movement to try to find one test that can be done on one day to judge an entire year's worth of learning. Donna Swindle is a very active, engaged principal. She is in her classroom every day. If there's a concern about a teacher that is not doing what they're doing, she actively engages with that teacher, provides development for that teacher, provides insight to that teacher. The parents are welcome on that campus at any time of the student day to be engaged. They have a very rigorous, there's a very open, honest family atmosphere, but don't be fooled. There's a rigorous expectation for learning on that campus, and everybody on that campus is aware. What we're trying to say about this test is we're trying to take a single test for students who have very complex needs and judge a teacher based on a test that can never judge that student. And even to say, well, will the IEP do it? That again goes back to we want to try to find that one piece of paper. What is necessary are, and they don't communicate just a little bit. They don't communicate just every night. Yes, there's a formalized report. They communicate every day to those parents. Every single day those parents get a communication about their students. So there is active involvement and engagement.
So if you could design something, that you feel would better evaluate teachers and their students, I mean, what would that look like? Is there a plan?
Well,
is there something out there? What would it look like?
I think Donna just outlaid many aspects of what that could look like. I believe Kathy Nall, with 31 years of experience, could probably tell you infinitely better than I can. But what it would certainly involve is a multiplicity of things and not a single test. Kathy, do you want to come up and?
I think that what Ms. Swindle was saying about the quality indicators would be the best way to evaluate a teacher.
It's not a quick fix, and it's something that the legislature's not. They're more interested in a quick, easy fix. This is something that takes dialogue. It takes the stakeholders, the people that actually work with the students to make those decisions and those choices. People that are a block down the street or in the DOE are not equipped to make those decisions about evaluating the students that they're not touching. That's the bottom line.